Flight attendant refuses to let black woman use first-class restroom. She shuts down the airline next week. She never expected a simple trip from New York to Los Angeles to change her life forever. But when Crystal Adams, a warm-hearted entrepreneur, mother, and proud black woman, boarded that fateful flight, she had no idea the storm brewing on board. A moment of blatant discrimination by a single flight attendant sparked a chain of explosive events that toppled an entire airline. In a single week, secrets unraveled, allies emerged from the most unexpected places, and a shocking corporate collapse stunned the world. This is the story of how Crystal, armed with unshakable determination, brought a giant to its knees and changed history forever. Crystal Adams was no stranger to flights. As a small business owner, she traveled around the country to meet clients, speak at conferences, and sometimes just to find a moment's respite from the demands of her bustling life. A single mother to a bright-eyed 10-year-old son named Elijah, she worked tirelessly, determined to give him every opportunity she never had. On this particular day, she arrived at John F. Kennedy International Airport with a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. Her kiosk-based clothing brand Kalena and Company had gained traction over the last 3 years, and she was about to fly to Los Angeles for what could be a game-changing pitch with prospective investors. It was the chance of a lifetime. "Keep dreaming big, Mama," Elijah had told her the night before, his warm smile lighting up the cramped living room of their Brooklyn apartment. "Don't give up on those business guys in LA. You're better than them anyway." Crystal had hugged him tight and promised to FaceTime him as soon as she landed. It was a promise she intended to keep. At the check-in counter of MidAtlantic Airlines, one of the smaller carriers that operated cross-country routes, Crystal smiled politely as she handed over her confirmation number to the attendant. The attendant, a tired-looking young man named Reese, scanned her ticket. "Miss Adams, I see you're in economy class. Checking any bags?" he asked. Crystal nodded. "Yes, one suitcase." Her flight was scheduled on the airline's sleek, newly leased Boeing 787 Dreamliner. The plane was known for its spacious cabin, large windows, and improved passenger comfort. MidAtlantic Airlines had been touting this new addition to their fleet as the next step toward competing with the bigger names in commercial aviation. "That'll be a $30 fee," Reese said. "And we'll have you boarded in Group 4. Crystal paid the fee and thanked him. Despite traveling often, she'd never been seated in first class, too expensive for her modest budget, but she had no complaints. She believed in working her way up, step by determined step, so that one day she could fly business class with her son, maybe even treat him to a first-class seat. Dreaming was part of her DNA. As she made her way to security, she felt that buzzing sense of hope, the same surge of energy she always got before a potentially transformative business meeting. She also felt a pang of nerves. She needed this pitch to go well. Her entire future and Elijah's hinged on it. She found herself repeating a mantra she'd relied on during tough times. Where there's a will, there's a way. Crystal had survived an underprivileged childhood, the loss of her father to cancer, and the constant barrage of naysayers who told her she would fail. She'd proven them wrong every single time. Boarding would begin in about an hour, so she decided to grab a quick bite. Plopping into a seat at a busy airport cafe, she treated herself to a latte and a slice of banana bread. She watched the swirl of travelers, business people, families, honeymooners flow through the terminal, each with their own unique story. The overhead screens displayed flight statuses, delays, on time, cancelled, gate changes. Her flight, MidAtlantic 305, remained on schedule. She checked her phone to see a text from her best friend, Shauna. "Go get 'em, boss lady. Rooting for you." Crystal smiled. She had a circle of unwavering support, and that was all she ever needed. Little did she know that this flight would not only threaten to disrupt her immediate plans, but would forever alter the trajectory of her life. When boarding began, Crystal stood in line behind a tall man wearing an impeccable navy suit. He was barking instructions into his cell phone. Another line snaked off to the left for first-class passengers. She couldn't help but glance over at that roped-off lane. Someday, she thought, someday soon. A petite flight attendant with blonde hair pinned into a neat bun was scanning boarding passes for the first-class passengers. Her name tag read Janelle. She flashed her brightest smile at each well-heeled traveller stepping onto the jet bridge. Reese, now stationed by the economy-class entrance, greeted Crystal again, scanning her ticket and ushering her toward the plane. Crystal found her seat, 34B, a middle seat near the wing. She exhaled, pushing aside any discomfort about being wedged between two strangers. The flight was a mere 6 hours. She could do this in her sleep if it meant expanding her business empire. As she settled in, she noticed the plane's interior had that new aircraft shine. The overhead bins were sleek, the lighting was soft, and the seats had built-in screens for in-flight entertainment. She had been mentally preparing to finalize details of her pitch during the flight, but maybe she'd allow herself a short break, watch a movie or read a book. Sometimes inspiration came from relaxation. Passengers filled up the seats and the usual overhead announcements commenced. Crystal heard the faint hum of the engines powering up. She closed her eyes momentarily, grounding herself before takeoff. By the time the plane started taxiing, she could feel her heart race with anticipation for her big break in Los Angeles. But something in the air felt off. She wasn't prone to superstition, yet the flight crew's demeanor struck her as odd. Janelle, the blonde flight attendant she'd seen at boarding, rushed up and down the aisle, placing overhead luggage forcibly, her lips tight. She corrected a couple of passengers who had partially reclined their seats while waiting on the tarmac. In the row ahead, a mother tried to calm her toddler, who was crying incessantly. Janelle shot the mother a withering glare, as if the child were purposely sabotaging her day. "Ma'am," Janelle said curtly, "I need you to keep your child quiet until after takeoff." The mother gaped. "I'm trying, but it's not safe if the child is not properly settled," Janelle snapped. "Please control him." Crystal frowned. Flight attendants often had to enforce rules, but there was a softer way to do it, an empathetic tone that many employed with struggling parents. Janelle's icy approach was jarring. Crystal brushed it off. Maybe Janelle was new, anxious, or simply having a bad day. The plane finally accelerated down the runway. Crystal felt the familiar upward tug in her stomach as they soared into the sky, leaving the concrete sprawl of Queens far behind. She stared out the window, imagining the roads and buildings getting smaller, her life's problems too, in the bigger scheme of things. But she never expected that soon the biggest problem would happen mid-air. About 2 hours into the flight, after beverage service, Crystal felt the need to use the restroom. She unbuckled her seatbelt and slid past the dozing man in the aisle seat, careful not to jostle him. When she stood, she realized both economy-class restrooms near her section were occupied. A small line had begun to form. She sighed, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. The seatbelt sign was off, so she decided to walk toward the front of the plane, hoping the first-class restroom might be free. She'd seen many passengers do that on other airlines without issue, especially if the economy restrooms were busy. Some airlines discouraged it, but usually the flight attendants simply asked politely for passengers to wait if the front lavatory was exclusively reserved. As she reached the front galley, she saw Janelle. The flight attendant's expression immediately registered disapproval. Crystal offered a polite smile. "Excuse me," Crystal began, her voice calm. "Are the restrooms here available?" Janelle's mouth formed a tight line. "They're for first-class passengers." Crystal's brow furrowed. "I understand." but the economy restrooms are occupied and I really need to go. Is it all right if I quickly use this one? I'll be fast." Janelle's posture stiffened. She folded her arms, glancing pointedly at Crystal's dark brown complexion, then flicking her gaze to the standard blue seatbelt around Crystal's waist, signifying an economy ticket. "I'm sorry, but this is a first-class lavatory. You'll have to wait." Crystal felt a twinge of embarrassment, but also recognized that her body language must remain poised. She nodded. "All right, I'll wait if you insist. I just thought it'd be okay." That should have been the end of the exchange, a minor inconvenience. But Janelle's eyes narrowed. "There's an obvious reason these restrooms are at the front. We have paying first-class customers up here. We'd appreciate it if, ma'am," Crystal said gently. "I'm a paying customer too." "Not in first class, you're not," Janelle shot back. "And last I checked, the restrooms in economy are fully functional." Crystal glanced at the line, forming behind her for the front lavatory. A white man in a casual T-shirt stood there, rummaging through his phone. Janelle let him pass without a single protest. He opened the door of the first-class lavatory and disappeared inside. A swirl of heat coursed through Crystal. "I'm sorry," she said, trying to maintain calm. "Didn't you just allow that passenger to use it?" Janelle shrugged. "He's traveling with a child in first class. He has privileges." Crystal cast a quick look at the man's boarding pass in his hand. It read economy. She could read the words seat 29C, but she bit her tongue. She didn't want a confrontation, at least not until she was sure. "I see," she said quietly. "Please go back to your seat," Janelle said, her tone condescending. "The economy restrooms will be free soon enough." A wave of shame and anger shot through Crystal as she turned to walk away. She felt singled out. Whether it was racial bias or a misguided sense of authority, she couldn't tell, but it stung. She found herself returning to her seat, forcing her breathing to remain even. The occupant of the economy restroom emerged, and Crystal wasted no time, quickly stepping inside. She locked the door, pressing her forehead against the cool metal wall for a moment. In her head, she replayed the conversation. Something about Janelle's glare felt unmistakably personal, as though the flight attendant believed Crystal didn't belong anywhere near that front lavatory. Suddenly, the discomfort of the cramped space heightened. She needed to calm down. "Don't let it ruin your day," she told herself. She finished, washed her hands, and emerged, her composure carefully in place. Yet she couldn't shake the heaviness in her chest. Back in her seat, Crystal tried to focus on the in-flight magazine and watch a mindless comedy on the seat-back screen. She tried to ignore the memory of Janelle's cold stare, but something in her refused to let go. She reached for her phone, now in airplane mode, and opened a note to jot down her thoughts. Sometimes journaling helped her process. She wrote, "Denied use of the first-class restroom. White male passenger allowed. Flight attendant named Janelle. Felt humiliating, possibly racial bias. Need to decide if I want to say something." She typed in a few more details and stared at the words. She'd always believed in speaking up for herself, but she also knew how quickly such incidents could escalate. And she had a major pitch in AIN less than 24 hours. The last thing she needed was trouble. Then, ironically, trouble came looking for her. A few seats ahead, she heard raised voices. The mother with the toddler was speaking to another flight attendant, a kinder, older man named Marcus. Apparently, the toddler had spilled juice, and the mother asked for towels or assistance. Marcus was about to help her when Janelle appeared, scowling. "We can't keep running around cleaning up after you," Janelle hissed, loud enough for multiple rows to hear. "It's not our job to babysit." "Should I fetch the pilot to help you raise your child too?" There was an audible gasp among nearby passengers. Marcus, red-faced, tried to diffuse the situation. The mother, close to tears, stammered, I just needed a few paper towels." Crystal's heart pounded. She felt an urge to intervene. But how? She wasn't sure. Still, she removed her noise-cancelling headphones and listened, aware others were doing the same. She's just asking for a little help. A voice from behind the mother said, "Why are you so rude?" Janelle whirled around. "I beg your pardon." Multiple passengers now stared, phones discreetly recording. Crystal felt tension spike across the cabin. Everything about Janelle's posture screamed defensiveness. A trickle of fear ran through Crystal. If Janelle was this openly hostile, what else might she do? The last thing Crystal wanted was an in-flight meltdown at 35,000 feet. Finally, Marcus stepped in. "Janelle, we have enough towels. Let me help the passenger." He offered a gentle nod to the mother, who thanked him profusely. After a moment, Janelle retreated to the front cabin, leaving a wave of hushed outrage in her wake. Crystal's seatmate, an elderly woman named Harriet, leaned over to whisper, "I've never seen anything like it. That attendant is downright nasty." Crystal nodded, forcing a small smile in return. "She's definitely having a bad day," Crystal said, "but it's still no excuse to treat people that way." Harriet gave Crystal's hand a reassuring squeeze. "Don't let her spoil your flight, dear." Crystal appreciated Harriet's concern, but beneath Harriet's comforting gesture, Crystal felt her own frustration simmering hotter. This is so wrong, she thought. Yet she kept her composure, not wanting to make a scene. Mid-flight, the cabin lights dimmed slightly. People either dozed or occupied themselves with reading or movies. The flight attendants began preparing a small snack service. Crystal kept her eyes on the aisle, curious as to whether Janelle would continue her offensive behavior. Sure enough, when Janelle came to her row, Harriet, who had requested black coffee, was handed a cup with cream and sugar. When Harriet politely reminded Janelle of her preference, Janelle rolled her eyes and marched off to fetch the correct beverage, not a word of apology. When Janelle reached Crystal, she offered peanuts and pretzels. Crystal responded with a quick "pretzels, please." Janelle, tapping her foot, shoved a tiny bag at her. "Thank you," Crystal said. Janelle's lips thinned. She hesitated, as if wanting to say more, then moved on. It was a tiny exchange, but the hostility in the attendant's eyes was impossible to miss. Crystal turned around to see if Harriet noticed. Harriet just frowned sympathetically. That woman's a ticking time bomb. Deciding not to dwell on the negativity, Crystal closed her eyes, trying to rest. That's when she overheard a snippet from the seat behind her, a whispered conversation between two men, presumably business travelers, saw the whole restroom thing. She totally let that white guy in while telling the black lady to go away. "That's messed up." "No kidding," the other man replied. "I even think someone might have filmed it. If that goes viral, the airline's in serious trouble." Crystal's stomach churned. Part of her felt validated. She hadn't imagined the discriminatory undertone, but part of her also felt uneasy. Her flight was halfway done, but each minute dragged on like an hour. "Maybe I should file a complaint," she thought, pulling out her phone to again note down everything that had transpired, including times and details. As she typed, she realized how small actions could reveal deep biases, and how they often haunted the victims long after the incident ended. About an hour before landing, the seatbelt sign flashed on. The captain announced moderate turbulence due to storms over the Rockies. Passengers were asked to remain seated and buckle up. The plane bounced a bit, but nothing too alarming. Crystal, an experienced flyer, tucked her phone into the seat pocket, reassuring Harriet that they were safe. But then the turbulence worsened. The plane jolted aggressively, overhead bins rattling. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, instructing flight attendants to suspend service and take their seats. The once lively cabin fell silent, except for the sporadic gasps whenever the plane lurched. In those tense moments, a stifled cry emerged from the row ahead, the mother from before. She had dropped the toddler's sippy cup, which rolled 2 rows back. Her child started bawling. The mother unbuckled to retrieve the cup, ignoring the sign. Janelle sprang from her jump seat, marching down the aisle against protocol. She reached the mother just as she retrieved the cup from the floor near Harriet's feet. "What do you think you're doing?" Janelle barked. "We're in turbulence. That seatbelt sign's on for a reason." The mother's eyes brimmed with tears, her toddler still wailing. She'd tried to apologize. He was crying. I just needed the cup. I don't want to hear excuses." Janelle snapped. "If you can't follow basic safety instructions, maybe you shouldn't be flying." Passengers stared in disbelief. The plane jerked again, sending Janelle stumbling backward. She crashed into Harriet's seat, nearly toppling. Crystal quickly extended a hand to steady her, but Janelle flinched away, as though recoiling from a poisonous snake. "I'm fine," Janelle hissed. She shot a venomous look at Crystal. "Keep your hands to yourself. Or is that too difficult?" Crystal froze in shock at the baseless hostility. Harriet gasped softly. The mother in the next row looked traumatized. Janelle scrambled back to the galley, ignoring standard turbulence protocols. Marcus tried to call after her, but Janelle was gone in a flash. Harriet leaned closer to Crystal. "This is unbelievable. You should report her once we land." Crystal swallowed, her heart still hammering. She nodded. "Yes, definitely." In that moment, something changed in Crystal's chest. She realized she couldn't just let this slide. She needed to stand up for herself, for the mother, for every passenger who might face this blatant disrespect or bigotry in the future. She wouldn't let Janelle's insults become a footnote in her life. The turbulence eventually subsided. The plane began its descent, the landing gear lowering as they approached Los Angeles. Crystal stared out the window, her mind spinning 100 miles an hour. She thought about how her father had taught her, "If you don't speak up when you see wrong, you become part of it." She silently promised him, and herself, that she'd take action. After a somewhat rough landing, the plane taxied to the gate at Los Angeles International Airport, LAX. Passengers erupted into relieved chatter. Overhead compartments were opened, carry-ons retrieved. A few travelers from the back quickly hustled forward. Crystal unbuckled, her eyes scanning for Janelle. The mother with the toddler looked visibly shaken. Marcus helped her gather her belongings, apologizing on behalf of the airline. Janelle remained at the front, near the cockpit door, sporting an irritated expression, as if eager for everyone to exit so she could be done with them. Harriet turned to Crystal and whispered, "Don't let this go. That woman was out of line." Crystal nodded. "Thank you for being a witness." Gathering her purse and phone, she stepped into the aisle. As she edged toward the exit, she made eye contact with Janelle. The flight attendant's stare was cold, almost defiant. Crystal felt a burst of courage. She wanted to say something, anything, to call Janelle out for her bigotry and unprofessionalism, but she thought better of it. Instead, she said in a calm, measured tone, "You have yourself a good day." Then she walked off. It wasn't a threat, it was simply a statement, but the faintest flicker of alarm crossed Janelle's eyes, as though she sensed that she might have pushed one passenger too far. Crystal stepped onto the jet bridge, her lungs filling with the stale, conditioned airport air. She rolled her shoulders, feeling the tension weigh heavily on them. She can't get away with this. Not this time. As soon as she was in the terminal, she pulled out her phone, turned off airplane mode, and called Shauna. It rang twice. "Cries, hey," Shauna said cheerily. "How was your flight?" Crystal exhaled, tears threatening to form. "It was awful, Shauna. This flight attendant, she refused to let me use the first-class restroom, but let a white man go instead. Then she just kept harassing everyone." "That's messed up," Shauna exclaimed. "You okay?" "I'm okay now, but it felt so humiliating. She singled me out. She was downright racist. She also bullied a mother. I can't stay silent. I need to report this." Shauna's tone turned supportive. "You should. That's not okay. I can't believe that still happens. If you need backup, I'm here." Crystal ended the call, promising to keep Shauna updated. She had to rush to claim her luggage, then hustle to her next engagement, a practice meeting with her local contact in LA. for the investor pitch. Despite her swirling emotions, she had a business to attend to. She couldn't let Janelle's negativity overshadow her ultimate goal. Later that evening, Crystal checked into her modest hotel near downtown Los Angeles. She dropped onto the bed, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts, excitement over the meeting tomorrow, anger and humiliation over the in-flight incident, and uncertainty about the next steps. She rummaged through her suitcase for a notepad, then sat at the small desk. Flipping to a blank page, she began drafting a formal complaint to MidAtlantic Airlines. She included flight number, date, times, a chronological description of events, and the flight attendant's name. She recounted the restroom denial, the mother's ordeal, the turbulence fiasco, every detail. She even attached the seat numbers of potential witnesses she had overheard discussing the incident. By the time she finished, the letter was 3 pages long. Reading it back, her hands shook. The cruelty of Janelle's attitude was stark and undeniable. She saved a digital copy, then typed it into an email to the airline's customer service. She reread it, ensuring accuracy. Finally, she clicked send. A sense of relief coursed through her, albeit tinged with anxiety. She knew airlines typically responded with generic apologies or partial compensations like flight credit, but this felt bigger. It wasn't about getting a voucher. It was about preventing such behavior in the future. If the airline brushed her off, she'd escalate. She promised herself that. Satisfied for the moment, she changed into comfortable sweats and tried to rehearse for the investor pitch, but her mind couldn't focus. Sleep beckoned. That night, she dreamed of airplanes losing altitude, of flight attendants wearing mocking smiles, refusing her entry to every door she approached, pushing her back with forceful hands. She woke at 3:00 a.m., drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. Elijah's face flashed in her mind. I have to do what's right, for him and for anyone else who might be targeted. She eventually drifted back to an uneasy sleep. Morning arrived in a blur. Crystal forced herself out of bed, did a quick meditation to center her thoughts, and donned her best business outfit, a sleek navy blue pantsuit that exuded confidence. She snatched her presentation materials and left for the meeting. The prospective investors were executives from a Los Angeles-based retail chain called Sunrise and Bloom, known for featuring small artisan labels. If they found Kalina and Company appealing, they could stock her products in dozens of stores, nationwide, an opportunity that could skyrocket her brand's visibility. The meeting took place in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the Hollywood Hills. Glancing at the sweeping vista, Crystal felt a surge of optimism. She delivered her pitch with passion, showcasing her designs, the brand's ethos of sustainability, and her personal story of building Kalina and Company from scratch. At first, the investors seemed intrigued. They asked detailed questions about supply chain, cost margins, and shipping logistics. Crystal answered confidently, feeling the synergy in the room. Then, just as she concluded her presentation, the team's head buyer, a sophisticated woman named Natalia, glanced at her phone and frowned. We might have to wrap this up quickly, Natalia said. There's some news about your airline, Miss Adams. Did you happen to fly MidAtlantic Airlines? Crystal blinked, perplexed. Yes, I did. Why do you ask? Natalia exchanged glances with her colleagues. Apparently, there's a viral video making waves on social media. We're seeing mentions of a flight attendant discriminating against a black passenger, refusing her the use of a first-class restroom. People are calling for a boycott of MidAtlantic. It's trending under #restroom racism. Crystal's heart hammered. That was me. That passenger is me. I didn't realize anyone filmed it. Natalia's eyes widened. Wow, that's intense. You said you run a fashion brand, but now you're in the middle of a scandal with an airline? Crystal swallowed, uncertain how this might affect the business deal. She briefly explained the incident, trying to keep her composure professional. I filed a complaint, but this was apparently caught on camera by someone else. I had no idea it was posted online. One of the investors, an older gentleman, looked concerned. Are you planning legal action? I haven't decided, Crystal admitted. But I won't stay silent. Natalia closed her laptop. Crystal, your brand has potential, but your name might be in the headlines for a while. This could overshadow the product launch if we move forward. We need a day or two to discuss our options. I hope you understand. Crystal forced a polite smile. Though her heart sank, she nodded, exchanging goodbyes. As she stepped outside into the bright California sun, she exhaled shakily. She had come for a transformative business opportunity, but now she was at the epicenter of a social media storm. Back at her hotel, Crystal frantically scrolled through social media, searching #Restroom racism. Sure enough, countless posts discussed a short, shaky phone video, a blonde flight attendant telling a black woman she couldn't use the first-class restroom, then letting a white passenger go right in. The clip captured Janelle's dismissive tone, though her face was slightly out of frame. However, the viewer could see how the passenger Crystal was turned away. Comments poured in, condemning the airline's behavior. Some demanded the firing of the flight attendant. Others urged a boycott, with sentiments like MidAtlantic Airlines has no place in a world striving for racial equality. The story had hit major trending status within hours. Crystal's phone buzzed incessantly texts, missed calls, emails. Shauna's message read, OMG, you're trending on Twitter, people are furious. Call me ASAP. A call from an unknown number lit up her screen. She hesitated, then answered, Hello? Hello, Miss Adams? This is Desmond Carter from CNN. We'd like to interview you regarding the incident on MidAtlantic Airlines. Would you be available? Crystal's breath caught in her throat. This is all happening so fast. Understood. We can work around your schedule. We just want your story in your own words. You're part of a major public conversation on racism and discrimination. She hesitated. Part of her was terrified at the idea of national news coverage, but another part recognized the significance of shining a light on systemic issues. If she spoke up, maybe it would push the airline to change. Maybe others who had faced similar injustice would feel validated. I'll do it, she finally said, but please give me a day to sort out some details. Of course. Thank you, Miss Adams. We'll be in touch. She ended the call and let out a shaky sigh. This was bigger than she'd ever anticipated. Meanwhile, she still needed to see what Sunrise and Bloom decided about her pitch. Her future felt like a precarious balancing act between newfound public visibility and the dream she'd spent years building. Hours later, as Crystal was trying to compose an email to her attorney friend in New York, she received a reply from MidAtlantic Airlines customer service. The text felt painfully generic. Subject, complaint #437,826. Mid-Atlantic Flight 305. Dear Miss Adams, we are sorry to hear about your recent experience with our airline. Mid-Atlantic Airlines values all our customers and strives to provide high-quality service. We appreciate your feedback and will investigate internally. Sincerely, Customer Care Department, Mid-Atlantic Airlines. There was no direct mention of race, the flight attendant's name, or the specific incident, just a hollow "will investigate." Crystal clenched her jaw. The airline had to know that the video was blowing up all over social media, yet they hadn't extended a genuine apology or even any deeper acknowledgement. She decided to respond, Dear Mid-Atlantic Airlines, thank you for the prompt reply. However, I consider this response inadequate. This incident goes beyond mere inconvenience. It was a clear act of discrimination by your flight attendant caught on video, and it's now viral. I expect a more detailed response and immediate action. Regards, Crystal Adams. She hit send, not sure if it would make a difference, but she wouldn't let them sweep it under the rug. By late evening, media outlets had begun covering the story in earnest. A local Los Angeles station ran a segment about alleged discrimination on a Mid-Atlantic Airlines flight, using the viral phone footage. Reporters sought statements from the airline, but the official response was just a boilerplate statement about taking matters seriously. Crystal's phone kept buzzing with requests for interviews, supportive messages from strangers, and outraged calls for a boycott. She felt overwhelmed. She tried calling Elijah but got no answer. Possibly he was at basketball practice. She left a voicemail telling him she loved him and hoped to catch him soon. Then, in a twist of fate, an email from Natalia at Sunrise and Bloom appeared in her inbox. Subject: Update from Sunrise and Bloom. Dear Crystal, after consideration, our team wants to express our solidarity with you. We admire your courage in speaking out about discrimination. Sunrise and Bloom stands for inclusivity and diversity. We would still like to move forward with a partnership pending final negotiations. Let's schedule a follow-up meeting to finalize the details. Best regards, Natalia Reed, lead buyer. Sunrise and Bloom. Crystal felt tears of relief. This was the break she needed, not just in her business but in a moral sense. Her willingness to stand up had not cost her the opportunity. In fact, it might have strengthened it, showing that her brand, like herself, believed in speaking truth to power. The next day, she accepted a short interview with CNN via Zoom. She told her story, focusing on the facts. She described Janelle's refusal to let her use the restroom, the difference in treatment for another passenger, and the attendant's continued hostility throughout the flight. The coverage ignited a firestorm. Within hours, more alleged victims of Mid-Atlantic's discriminatory practices surfaced online. One woman claimed that a gate agent had been rude and dismissive when she requested wheelchair assistance. Another passenger, also a black woman, said that on a different flight months ago, she had felt singled out by the cabin crew for extra scrutiny during the boarding process. Social media erupted with condemnation, and the hashtag boycott Mid-Atlantic soared. Journalists uncovered that Mid-Atlantic had settled a few minor discrimination lawsuits in the past, paying hush money to avoid bigger scandals. While none involved Janelle specifically, the pattern looked troubling. By the third day, shares of Mid-Atlantic Airlines' parent company, Northern Aero Corp, began a downward trend. Investors worried about the mounting PR crisis. Industry analysts pointed out that in a fiercely competitive market, a major PR scandal could push a smaller airline to the brink. Crystal watched the drama unfold from her hotel room, feeling both stunned and empowered. She had only wanted an apology and a commitment to do better. Now it seemed her ordeal had opened a Pandora's box of revelations about the airline's corporate culture. That evening, her phone buzzed. A new email from Mid-Atlantic's corporate communications, subject: official statement, Mid-Atlantic Airlines. Mid-Atlantic Airlines is dedicated to treating all passengers with respect and dignity. We are aware of the video circulating online. We have launched an internal investigation. At this time, we cannot comment on ongoing personnel matters. We remain committed to delivering an inclusive travel experience. No signature. Crystal leaned back in her chair, reading between the lines. We cannot comment on ongoing personnel matters, likely meant Janelle was under review or suspended, but there was still no personal apology. No one reached out to Crystal for a direct conversation about how they might rectify the situation. Over the next few days, a swirl of events took place. 1. Consumer backlash, hashtags, and social media campaigns urged travelers to cancel upcoming Mid-Atlantic flights. Travel agencies reported cancellations under protest. 2. Employee leaks. Anonymous flight attendants and staffers began leaking stories of a toxic work environment where complaints about racism or prejudice were swept under the rug. Some leaked internal memos that revealed management had long been aware of issues with certain crew members, but rarely took action. 3. High-profile endorsements. Celebrities and activists chimed in, amplifying Crystal's story. A well-known actress tweeted, "I stand with #Crystal Adams. No traveler should face discrimination in the sky. Boycott Mid-Atlantic #Restroom Racism." Her post garnered 500,000 likes in a day. 4. Legal inquiries. Civil rights groups announced they were looking into Mid-Atlantic's practices. The NAACP published a statement condemning discriminatory airline policies. Even the Department of Transportation hinted at possible regulatory scrutiny. Crystal found herself bombarded with interview requests. She tried to pick a few carefully: MSNBC, a couple of popular podcasts, because too many appearances might overshadow her newly signed contract with Sunrise and Bloom. She also worried about how Elijah was handling the attention back home. Shauna assured her that Elijah was proud of his mum's courage. Every day, the tension around Mid-Atlantic escalated. And then, on the 7th day since the incident, something unprecedented happened. Mid-Atlantic's board called an emergency press conference. Their newly appointed CEO, Howard Klein, stepped onto a stage in front of reporters. Cameras flashed. "We at MidAtlantic Airlines take these allegations very seriously," Klein read from a prepared statement. "Effective immediately, we are terminating the flight attendant in question and conducting mandatory anti-discrimination training for all employees. We have also initiated discussions with Miss Crystal Adams to address her grievances." Pausing for effect, Klein took a breath. Nevertheless, the financial impact of these allegations and the subsequent consumer backlash has been severe. Flights have been cancelled, revenue streams lost, and investor confidence has wavered. As a result, we have no choice but to announce that MidAtlantic Airlines will cease operations next week, transferring remaining flights to our parent corporation, Northern Aero Corp, while we undergo restructuring. The room erupted with questions. Klein's voice trembled slightly. "This is not a decision we took lightly. We will continue to support our loyal employees through this transition. We hope the public understands." Staring at the live stream from her hotel TV, Crystal felt her jaw drop. They're shutting down the airline? She'd never intended for that to happen. Her heart pounded with a mix of guilt and a strange sense of triumph. She had wanted justice, and justice had arrived in a massive, unexpected wave. News of Mid-Atlantic Airlines' impending shutdown raced around the globe. Some employees expressed anger that one flight attendant's actions and the subsequent mishandling by management had cost them their livelihoods. Others felt it was a long time coming, given the airline's rumored internal issues. Journalists pounced on the story of how a single moment of discrimination caught on camera led to a chain reaction that toppled an entire airline. They labeled Crystal the whistleblower passenger or the unstoppable force. While the story was sensationalized, many recognized that the real cause was deeper: an accumulation of poor practices, corporate negligence, and an environment that allowed prejudice to go unchecked. That same day, a representative from Northern Aero Corp contacted Crystal directly to schedule a meeting. She agreed, hoping to clarify her stance that while she wanted accountability, she harbored no ill will toward the thousands of innocent employees who would now lose their jobs. They set up a meeting for the following day at a private law office in downtown LA. Crystal spent that night pacing her hotel room. She stared out the window at the city lights, recalling her father's words about speaking up against wrongdoing. She wondered if this was truly the path her father would have supported, wrecking an entire corporation. But she reminded herself that the blame lay at MidAtlantic's feet. They could have handled her complaint differently from the start. They had every chance to rectify and apologize. Instead, they tried to minimize it, letting the scandal fester until it ignited a movement of backlash. The result was as swift as it was devastating. The next morning, Crystal arrived at the law offices of Carter and Lamb, wearing her navy blue blazer, determined to stand tall. Inside a sleek conference room, she met with Cynthia Porter, a legal representative for Northern AeroCorp. Cynthia greeted her politely, albeit with visible tension. "Miss Adams," Cynthia began, "thank you for coming. I want to start by expressing Northern AeroCorp's regret over your experience and the subsequent fallout. We understand you've become an unwilling figurehead of this controversy." Crystal nodded. "It's been overwhelming, yes, but I'm not unwilling to be part of a conversation that leads to real change. I hope you understand that's my priority." Cynthia adjusted her glasses. "We'd like to settle any potential claims you might have against MidAtlantic or Northern AeroCorp. We're prepared to offer compensation for emotional distress. Additionally, we'd like your input on new policies to ensure no further instances of discrimination." Crystal listened carefully. Part of her wanted to reject any hush money, but she recognized that a settlement could help her support her family, grow her business, and also allow her to create positive changes within the parent company's structures. Maybe she could leverage this moment to help employees from all backgrounds feel safer. "We can discuss compensation," Crystal said calmly. "But it's crucial to me that your new or remaining airlines implement mandatory diversity and inclusion training, have a transparent complaint system, and pledge immediate accountability when issues arise. And I want a formal apology." Cynthia nodded, taking notes. "We can do that." They spoke for hours, hashing out the details. Finally, by evening, they reached a tentative agreement. Northern AeroCorp would, 1. Provide a substantial settlement to Crystal, covering damages and legal fees. 2. Implement immediate anti-discrimination training for all airline staff under their umbrella. 3. Develop a robust system for reporting and investigating complaints with an independent oversight board. 4. Release a public apology to Crystal specifically, acknowledging the wrong done to her. When the final draft of the agreement lay before her, Crystal signed it, feeling a sense of relief. This was more than just compensation. It was a tangible step toward ensuring no one else went through what she endured on Flight 305. Cynthia, concluding the meeting, said, "Thank you for working with us. We hope this is the start of a better chapter for air travel." Crystal shook her hand, then stepped out into the Los Angeles evening. She glanced at the city lights once again, the same lights she'd stared at anxiously just days ago. Now they looked different. She felt lighter, as if a burden had lifted, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. 1 week after the fateful flight, MidAtlantic Airlines officially announced the closure of its operations. Their final flights landed with little fanfare. Airports around the country removed MidAtlantic signage, gates once bearing their logos replaced by other carriers. Thousands of employees faced the uncertainty of job hunts, though some would be absorbed by Northern AeroCorp's other subsidiaries. In the midst of the upheaval, the bright side was that Northern AeroCorp's new policies were rolled out swiftly. Training sessions began immediately, and the oversight board was formed with civil rights activists and aviation experts among its members. As for Janelle, news emerged that she was terminated for gross misconduct. She maintained her innocence in a tearful TV interview, claiming she never intended to discriminate, that she was merely following policy. Yet multiple eyewitness accounts and the viral video told a different story. Public sympathy for her was minimal, aside from fringe voices who lamented cancel culture. Crystal, now armed with the settlement, reinvested in Kalena and Company. She secured a new workspace in Brooklyn, upgraded her production capacity, and hired 3 more team members. She could afford a better apartment for Elijah and herself, with a small backyard where he could shoot hoops. The partnership with Sunrise and Bloom proceeded smoothly, culminating in a grand launch event. Crystal stood in front of a large display of her clothing line at a flagship store in LA. The store manager introduced her to a cheering crowd of supporters. Cameras flashed as she snipped a ribbon to officially welcome Kalena and Company to the brand's shelves. A swirl of excitement filled the air. She spotted Shauna in the crowd, waving, and next to her, Elijah beamed with pride. On stage, Crystal took the microphone, fighting back tears. "This isn't just about clothes," she said. "It's about perseverance, equality, and self-worth. My father taught me never to let anyone tell me I'm not good enough or that I don't belong. I hope my journey reminds everyone here, if you see something wrong, speak up. You never know how far your voice will carry." The applause thundered in her ears. Flashes of cameras flickered like stars. Her eyes glistened as she pulled Elijah into a hug. He whispered, "I'm proud of you, Mom." In that moment, she remembered the humiliating confrontation on the airplane, the tears she'd held back, and the unstoppable wave of public support that had toppled a corporation. She never sought to destroy an airline, but she had demanded accountability. The chain of events led to a reckoning that hopefully would make flying safer and fairer for countless people in the future. As her fans and new customers approached to congratulate her, she realized how far she'd come from a cramped apartment and doubts about her future to a triumphant business deal and a national conversation about racial equality. "Where there's a will, there's a way," she reminded herself, smiling through fresh tears of gratitude. In the end, Crystal's story became a testament to the power of standing up for what is right. She fought back against a single flight attendant's offensive conduct, but, more importantly, she held an entire corporation accountable. In just 1 week, her courage, amplified by thousands of voices on social media, shut down an airline and sparked meaningful changes within the industry. Through it all, Crystal never lost sight of her own dreams, launching Kalena and Company onto a national stage and setting a powerful example for her son, Elijah. Now, we want you, our wonderful viewers, to keep this story alive. Don't just witness injustice, speak out and create change. If you found inspiration in Crystal's journey, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's spread this message of empowerment far and wide, reminding everyone that a single voice truly can make history. Thank you for watching.